While you were in the Air Force, you met Norma.
I did.
Who was your wife for how many years?
65.
65 years. And you met her in Nebraska, I believe. Were you
Yes, I did.
stationed at Omaha, the
I
base?
was in an outpost out in the middle of a 640-acre alfalfa field.
Really?
The
Really?
closest town was about the size of Burlington, maybe a little bigger, called Elkhorn, between there and Omaha. And there was 40 of us stationed there.
Now, how did you happen to meet Norma?
Well, I told everybody, including her, after the day she died, that I got her telephone number on the wall in the men's restroom at the bus station.
I hope you were kidding.
Nobody has ever heard anything different than
I
that.
hope you weren't joking.
It's just kind of an interesting
And,
thing.
and she gave you a...
I had her telephone number and I called her. And I told her I was Myron Brubaker from Kokomo, Indiana. And her mother answered the telephone and I wasn't sure of her name. And I said, "Is Nancy there?" And her mother said, "You mean Norma?" I
Oh.
said, "Yeah, that's right." And I talked to her and for about 40 minutes. And she said, "Why don't you come over?"
Well,
And so I went over there, and this white-haired man came to the door and said, "The kids are down in the rec room." And all that evening, a girl by the name of Doris Grocott played the role of Norma,
oh,
and Norma played a different Nancy. You know, they picked up that Nancy name.
oh,
So I stayed there, and of course Doris Grocott had to come home, and I offered to drive her home. Well, of course they wouldn't allow that to happen, and Norma wouldn't date me.
well,
So I started going to her church,
really?
and she sang in the choir there, and sometimes a solo. And I just kept going there. And then one Sunday, she said her mother is inviting you for Sunday dinner. And from then on, we started dating.
Well, interesting courtship.
I never had any inkling or any thought about getting married until it come time to get discharged, and I had to make a decision. I either had to wave goodbye and drive off and leave her, or take her with me. I didn't figure her folks would let me marry her, but, you know, being from, she was awful close. She was an adopted girl, but anyway,
Really?
I played a lot of golf with her dad, and I guess he realized that I had plans for my life, and so
My goodness sakes.
I married her.
So they let you marry her,
Yeah,
brought her to Indiana,
I did.
and didn't stay long because my, did you people travel.
She cried about halfway back here. But it wasn't very long, though. When she'd go back there, she couldn't wait to get back here.
I can relate to that. When my husband decided he wanted to move south and we had to move to South Carolina, I had to leave young grandchildren here, and
Well,
I remember I cried all the
Norma
way to South Carolina.
Lee was become a very good friend of Betty Smith right away, and of course Dick had married her, and she was from Escanaba, Michigan, so both of them was about
Away from
700
home.
miles from home,
And you and Dick were good friends for a long
yeah,
time.
forever. And
Yes.
Betty still can't get over Norma's death because they were just like
Yes,
sisters,
yes.
practically.
That would be hard to lose a friend like that, yeah. So, when you got out of the Air Force then, you went to work for Soya, right?
Mhm.
Tell us about Soya.
Well, I knew, I kind of grew up a lot when I was over in Korea and matured a lot. And by that time, I already knew what I wanted to do and who I wanted to work for before I ever even went to Purdue.
Really?
Yeah, my family was always in the feed and grain business, and I had an interest in that, and I wanted to work for a corporation that the management level come up through marketing instead of bean counters and production.
So, your dad, who was Roy Brubaker, he already worked for Soya, did he?
No, he was
No, but he was a
ran
farmer.
Star Roller Mills.
Oh, the Star Roller Mill, okay.
And they were a Purina dealer at the time, and that was one of the two companies that I wanted to work for, either Purina or Central Soya.
Uh-huh.
And I got rejected from Purina because they said I made too high a score on their physics aptitude test, and that didn't make good salesmen.
Really? Why would that not make a good
I don't know,
salesman?
but
You're
that was
too
their,
smart?
that was their theory, you know, and they said that they never had anybody score as high as I did on that. I have a good mechanical aptitude.
Well, yeah, you evidently
I
do.
have a big interest in that sort of thing, but that surprised me. If I had that to do over again, I would have scored a little different. But I'm satisfied with who I work for. I have
Yes,
a good
and you worked for
career.
Soya for
31 years.
31 years.
31
Yeah.
and a half.
Now, this Norma that you took away from home, you took her a lot of other places.
Yeah.
How many countries did you?
18.
18 countries. And one of which was Seoul, Korea, where you had served,
She never
right?
went with me to Korea.
She didn't go to
or
Korea.
Japan. She didn't like to go to Asia, but she went to Germany and Amsterdam and all this. The company would allow her to go, not always, but sometimes she could travel with me.
Yes. And what was your job when you were traveling to these foreign countries for this grain, for this stuff? Now, what did Soya do? They made flour, right?
No, Central Soy Company's core business is soybean processing.
Soybean processing.
And they were
Oh, okay.
the largest soybean processor in the world, and they had oil refineries that made shortening for people like
Oh.
McDonald's and Procter & Gamble and
Oh,
people
really?
like that.
Interesting. Wow.
And but then all their side businesses, they had the feed business and they had food businesses, frozen foods, and we was into about everything.
So did your work vary depending upon what product you were selling?
Well, as I progressed through the company, they keep putting you into different divisions to give you a vision into each one of their entities. You know, there was feed business and food business, and we had 260 some fast food restaurants.
My goodness.
And owned a winery in California,
Well,
Fred's Frozen Foods, and also Butcher Boy Foods in California. It's a worldwide company.
well, you did have a wide variety of experience then,
Yeah.
things you had to deal
I
with.
served in several different departments, and ultimately the international, and I ended up in mergers and acquisitions.
Okay, so now we need to go back a little bit too to your mother's family, because your mother's family was Roy's mother, Norma Hahn. Not Norma.
Mary Juanita.
Mary Juanita Hahn. Yes.
She was
tell us
married
about
to the
your
Brubakers
grandpa.
and Juanita to the Hahns.
Right. She was their only child, right?
Yes.
Of Earl Hahn. And that was your mother. And Mr. Hahn was certainly instrumental in developing Burlington. Tell us about some of the things that he did for Burlington.
Well, I got a few notes here that I'm going to refer to, but
Besides building the beautiful Spanish mansion at the east end of town, and that whole, well, he started out by, I believe he bought 40 acres of pasture land, which is the land along Zook Lane and Mill Road. There was 40 acres of just pasture land when Earl Hahn bought it. And then he developed all of that.
no, he didn't. Bob
Well-
Zook did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My grandfather owned that 40 acres there
Yes.
on Mill Road where the old green stucco house is.
Okay.
And my father owned the 40 acres on the other side of the road across from the park.
Oh,
And,
okay.
And neither one of them had the interest or foresight to Bob Zook come on and develop most of that land.
So Bob Zook was instrumental in that getting
That's right.
developed to what, including the mill,
No, just the land. He developed the real estate.
the real estate, okay. Now, Earl Hahn,
I didn't live here, so, you know, I can't expand on what all he did, but I would give Bob Zook credit for doing a lot of that.
before Earl Hahn started Star Roller Mill here, he did Adams Mill, according to the book.
Not really. Grandpa Hahn had an interest in that mill, but it was Roy Hahn that owned it for a while.
Roy, okay. But it was the Hahn family
Yeah.
that was into the mill business before they did the one here in Burlington. They
Well,
did.
Abram Horn came here with 5 brothers from Germany, and he was a farmer and lived in Thorntown. And he was the father of Shepherd Horn.
Shepherd, okay.
And Shepherd Horn lived in Boone County, was engaged in the milling business, and died suddenly in 1864. And he had 9 children.
9 children, yes.
One of which was Martin G. Horn.
Yes. The oldest was Martin.
And then Martin G. Horn was my grandfather's.
That was Earl's father.
That's right.
So Martin is the one you called Grandpa Hahn?
No, Earl Horn was
Earl,
my grandpa
okay.
Horn.
All right.
And,
So Martin was your great-grandfather then?
Yeah, Martin G. was educated in Thorntown, and he learned the milling trade from his father, Shepherd Horn. And of course, they had 6 children, and my grandfather had 5 brothers and a sister.
Wow.
And that was Aunt May Rodkey. She married Sam Rodkey, who was a prominent farmer in this part of the country back then.
Yeah.
And I remember Aunt May quite well. But there was James P. Hahn was the cashier of the Burlington State Bank, and Martin G. Hahn was president of that bank. And then Leslie D. ran the mercantile business in Burlington. And they had their fingers in everything, and Earl Hahn ran Star Roller Mills.
Yeah.
Roy Hahn was a contractor, and he also owned the Cutler Mill for a period of time, and there was
he did?
issues between Grandpa Hahn and Roy over that for some reason.
Really?
I don't know the details, but there was issues over that. And Roy Hahn committed suicide. And
Wow.
he shot himself, and I happened to have the weapon he did that with.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
And
Really?
and then
What was you don't know what the dispute was about?
no, but my Grandma Hahn thinks that his wife did it.
Really? Really? Interesting.
That's why I have the
Suicide
gun.
by wife.
She didn't want that gun in the house, and I was a teenager when she gave it to me, and I still have it. But she always said that she was sure that his wife, there was a lot of animosity between Roy Hahn and the Earl Hahn family.
Well,
And then Chase Hahn, he was the auditor in Carroll County and later lived in Lafayette.
did some of you know him, Chase? No?
And I know most of their kids, but I've kind of lost track of them, you know, and been gone. But anyway.
So your mother was the daughter of Earl Hahn, right? Yes.
And Martin G. Hahn was in the Civil War.
That was Grandpa, yes.
Yeah, my
Uh-huh.
Grandpa Hahn's father. He enlisted in the 63rd Indiana Division. He fought in
the Union
Atlanta
Army.
and Franklin and Nashville and
Wow.
several other battles. And I happen to have the powder horn that
You
he
did?
had in the Civil War. Still got powder in it. I was supposed dates back to Civil War era.
Wow. And Indiana's involved with that Civil War
Yeah.
history,
Yeah,
isn't
he
it?
was in the Civil War for 3 years.
Yeah. Now, did he live here in this Burlington area?
Well, he was mostly in Thorntown, but then he ended up in Clinton County and Howard County, and then ultimately settled in